Hello, and this is the Warpforge with a codex review. Yes, it is the Ork Codex I've so long been promising you all. So basically what's going to happen in this mini-series, or series, is I'm going to go through, for each video, each force organisation chart slot, so troops, HQ, heavy support, fast attack, etc, etc. I will then go through multiple detachments, I will then go through allies, then I will go through the Ork formation, and then I'll give my honest opinion on it all. Apologies, there are just some icons that are notifying me to random event things, which I have to put away because it's very distracting. I apologise for this bit of lighting here. I've tried moving it around, but apparently it doesn't like that and just waves around, and I can't switch the light off because then you can't see us. So, without further ado, I will talk about the troops choices in this video. There are only two troops choices in the Ork Codex, Boys and Gretchen. Ork Boys and Gretchen. There is no force organisation swapping, so back in the old Codex you could swap out stuff with Tactica Gutsmech and swap Ork Bikers for troops from fast attack. Pardon me, sorry. And that doesn't happen anymore, that just doesn't exist, unfortunately. So, I'll go through the Ork Boys first. For 10 Ork Boys, no sergeants, just for 10 standard Ork Boys, 60 points. They all have sluggers, choppers and stick bombs. Stick bombs are assault grenades, sluggers are bolt pistols with AP6, and choppers basically close combat weapon. Wham. Special rules, they have the Here We Go special rule, they have the Furious Charge special rule, and the Mob Rule special rule. Here We Go is basically reroll one dice for the charge distance. So say you got a 6 and a 1, you can reroll that 1 for the charge distance. You get Furious Charge, which means if you make a successful charge against an enemy unit, you get +1 strength. So Orks are usually strength 3, but strength 4 on the charge if they manage to charge with Furious Charge. A mob rule. Mob rule is basically if you fail a morale test or a pinning check, you roll a dice, you read the effect on what it says. Usually it requires you to make a few wounds on your own boys, which you do get armor saves for. You roll for the armor saves, and after all that's done, you pass the morale check or pinning check. Options. Well, options you can get, where you can get an additional 20 boys into that mob, so you can have a maximum of 30 boys, and if you want to make them cheap and standard, that's roughly 180 points. The entire mob may replace their they're definitely sluggers with shooters. Not sluggers and choppers, just sluggers with shooters for additional point. So that means it'll be additional 10 points for those 10 Ork Boys. I'd also like to know, before I forget, that one Ork Boy costs 6 points a model. So, if you're wanting to put a shooter onto your boys, it'll be 7 points a model, for example. The entire mob may take heavy armour, so that's 4 points a model. So already, if you want an Ork Boy with heavy armour, that's 10 points. If you want a shooter, that's an additional point, so that's 11 points a model. For every 10 Ork Boys in your mob, you may replace one slugger or chopper or shooter with a special weapon of the following, which is a big shooter or a rocket launcher. So say you've got 30 boys and you want to trade out 3 weapons. You can trade out for either 3 big shooters, 3 rocket launchers, or a mixture of one or the other. One model may be upgraded to a boss nob. A nob is basically your sergeant, your biggest boy in the unit, the bully who bullies the rest of the mob. Basically. A boss nob, and I will quote from the pages, so if you give me a moment, and we're back. You can take one melee weapon, or one ranged weapon for the nob within the following sections for the nob. For ranged weapons, you can place the ranged weapon with a shooter, a twin-linked shooter, a combi weapon with rocket launcher, or a combi weapon with Scorcher. For melee weapons, you can replace his chopper with, or melee weapon with, a big chopper or a power claw. So now we have that. You may also take, the boss knob may also take a boss pole, which allows you to re-roll on the mob rule chart. And your Ork boys can select a truck for dedicated transport as well. So, that's all your options, what you can take. My personal opinion is you have to be very specific on how you run your boys. You can't mix and match, and you can't do whatever you fancy with your boys. That's mainly because if you do that, you will most likely have a very weak structure in your army. And I say that because Ork boys are very, very essential to an Ork boy. I'm sure multiple people will agree with me that Ork boys do form a very large chunk of your army. If you just mix and match and just happy slap anywhere, your list is going to crumble and your opponent's going to take up a very easy win. So you've got to have some sort of structure. The structures I would go for, you can take this as a pinch of salt, but this is how I would run them, is either full big mobs with heavy armour and one big shooter mob. Basically 3 big shooters and shooters with heavy armour or big mobs. And I'll keep that to a minimum of 3 or 4. That's because a shooter mob with heavy armour roughly costs around 350 to 400 points. That's very expensive. So I always try to keep to a shooter mob like that for 1, and then give the rest to chopper and slugger mobs because it's slightly cheaper. I'll also try and say that it's not very wise to also go to big mobs as well with heavy armour. As I've said, it's very expensive, and heavy armour only gives you a 4+ armour save. And there's a lot of AP 4 now on the table than there ever was. So it's very hard to get the balance right. I wouldn't recommend it, but in big point games when you've got the points to spare, go for it. In smaller points, such as 2,000 or less, I would recommend either sticking to small units, small 12 to 15 man units with heavy armour in trucks. A truck capacity is 12, so I would suggest stick them in 12 capacity. And I say that because trucks will get you everywhere that you want. However, heavy armour, as I've already said, makes your Ork boys 10 points a model. It's very expensive. So I would try and get some protection and just throw them out. Throw them out everywhere, overloading the target priority. The second way I would run them is just run them cheap as chips, shooter mobs. Don't give them any form of heavy armour. Just shooters, big shooters and rockets everywhere. And just plough the field in Tactica. That's because, like I say, 30 stone bolters, you're essentially speaking, with a shorter range of 18 inches. It's still 30 stone bolter shots. It's crazy amount of dice. So, take that with what you will, flood the board with Tactica, and increase your threat range of each unit. The other range, which is the more traditional route in my opinion, is cheap as chips, big mobs of Ork chopper boys, just the way it's supposed to be. Just fill out on the Ork boys, cheap as chips, 180 points for 30, put a knob in with a power claw, boss pole. If you really want to give it heavy armour, give it heavy armour. I would literally just only leave it as a slugger, power claw, boss pole in every mob, and then just throw them out. And I say power claw because yes, it's a power fist, but Orks also get Furious Charge, which is not what many other armies do, which means that on the charge we get a Strength 9 power claw. Strength 9 power claw, or power fist, as they really are in game terms, will take out most tanks. It will just punch and rip it apart. I know it sounds a bit awkward if it was a single attack, which is what probably most of you are thinking. Orks don't get a single attack for a power claw. A boss knob gets 3 attacks. If he gets a charge, it's strength 9, and that goes up to 4 attacks. 4 strength 9 attacks. Even for a Land Raider is going to be slightly nervous at the sight of an Ork Power Claw. So those are the ways I would run an Ork Boy mob. And if you get any Warlord traits, and you decide to go the small route with heavy armour and 12 boys and trucks, try your best to outflank as much as possible. This includes boys with trucks and knobs and so on. It's just to increase on the overload on priority targeting, because you want your opponent to feel threatened by the amount of units you're just throwing up at them. Orcs are a very aggressive army. They throw stuff into the face and say, deal with it. Now, depending on which army and who the player is, some armies can deal with it quite well. Some armies are very nervous, let's just say, when you go full-on aggressiveness like that. And it does have its pros and cons, unfortunately. The pros is, if it pulls off, it's going to be forever in your favour. I can guarantee you that. Where the cons, when it doesn't, it tends to go badly. Very, very badly. Which leads on to my next unit, which are the Gretchen. Gretchens are a mix of everything. So, Gretchen only gets a Grot Blaster. A Grot Blaster is basically a mixture between a bolt pistol and a las... Well, it's a shorter range las gun, sorry. That's what it is. It's like a 12-inch las gun. A Runt Herd has a grabber stick, and that's like a massive like claw thing just to throw the runts around. They have sluggers and stick bombs. Stick bombs are assault grenades, so as far as I remember, you don't lose the initiative when you're charging through terrain if you have assault grenades, if I remember correctly. Not that it matters, because they're all initiative 2, but still it's something to have. Here we go, Runt Herd only, so if you've got your Runt Herd live somehow, he's charging, he gets to reroll his dice. And Furious Charge, the Runt Herd only, so if he charges, he gets +1 strength. A unit of 10 Gretchen with 1 Runt Herd, which is 11 models in total, is 35 points. These are cheap as chips for a reason. These are really cheap. I mean, I'll just go down to it, to the nitty gritty. 20 additional Gretchen for 3 points a model. So, 6, 7. So if you want 30 Gretchen, that's 95 points. Bare bones. That's how cheap we're talking. And technically, you could go lasgun heavy with Gretchen. I wouldn't advise it, and I'll tell you in a little bit. You must take 1 additional Runt Herd for every 10 Gretchen in the unit. So, say you get 3, you've got to have 3 Runt Herds controlling the little mob. Runt Herd may replace a grabber stick with a Grot Prod, and Grot Prod's like a taser. It's like something you jab and electrocute cattle with. Any Runt Herd may take a Squig Hound. A Squig Hound basically punishes you very heavily for missing a morale check. You get past the morale check, but the Squig Hound just tends to like eat a lot of Gretchen in the process. As in, you roll a few dice, and that's how many casualties you'll take on the unit to pass a morale check that you failed. It's very hilarious when you see it, and these are a very comical unit, I must admit. How would I use these in relation to the Ork Boys? These are a great backfield unit. These are not meant to go out in the open. If these go out in the open, you're taking a truck with them. You're putting them in a truck and you're just flying out there. Because I'm telling you that now, because if you want to be objective stealing, then you've got to clear a route for them. Clear the route with them with boys or some other special fancy toy, and then steal the objective. But the easiest and probably best route to go is backfield unit. You've got that odd objective that you've got to keep, maybe objective 6, and it could possibly win you the game if you're drawing tactical objective cards in Eternal War missions, if I remember correctly. No, Maelstrom of War missions. My apologies. And even in Eternal War missions, there's still a great backfield unit. Anything comes close, they're feeling 30 models worth of las guns at 12-inch range with a better ballistic skill of 3. So that means they're hitting on 4s. I personally wouldn't have these as much as me boys. Me boys matter more. I would have the odd unit of this, or the odd 2 units maybe, because I want to fill up on boys, because I really want to go aggressive, because that's the way Orks, that's the way the direction of this codex has been brought forth, in my opinion. Gretchen just, well, the toughness is 2. If you really want them to go aggressive, you're using them as a meat shield, and you don't want to do that because that's wasted points, especially in this meta where First Blood is an actual thing. You want to keep them at the back, 30 las guns, firing out at anything that comes close, and then praying that your opponent rolls unlucky dice, must be said. But like I say, good backfield unit. For synergy with the Ork boys is, as I've said, great backfield unit. I feel like I'm repeating myself way too many times, but it has to be stated, they're a great backfield unit. Good enough so that the Orks don't have to worry about backfield objectives or losing out on them. So your Ork boys can just fly out, scream war, hack things onto bits, and you don't have to worry about your backfield objective. So yeah, that is the troops choices within the Ork Codex. I think the next unit selection I will do is probably the HQs. So war bosses, to pain boys, to big mechs, to Captain Badrock himself, to Gazgul maybe, because he's a Lord of War, but he also acts as a warlord. So next video will probably definitely be the HQs. If you liked what you heard in this video review and you want to hear more about different units and what will be the best way for synergy and combo wise to get a really effective Ork fighting force, then please subscribe to this channel if you want to see more of this content, and just give us a like. If there's any thoughts that you thought might be useful in this video, just post a comment. If you want to discuss about anything that I've said, or discuss anything that you feel in the troops choices in the codex, then just post a comment below. I like talking to you guys and gals at home. So, after all that, this is the Warpforge with an Ork Codex review on the troops choices. This is the Warpforge signing out, and remember, keep on forging.